I still, if I hear from or speak with or get a text message from, some of those coaches on the Mount Rushmore of head coaches, it still makes me feel like this is unbelievable.
Pleased to be joined now by Arizona head coach Jedd Fisch. Jedd, coming off a really impressive debut win where you went to San Diego State. There was a opening of the stadium, and you guys responded well by thumping the Aztecs pretty good. How'd you feel? Pretty good considering last year it was just kind of getting the groundwork started. It seemed like you guys have made dramatic improvement in the roster. What were the things that really stood out to you in week one?
Well, we obviously knew that we were going to try to change a lot of things over the course of the last 365 days and build the program to a place where we think we can, start getting it moving in the right direction. We started, changing our culture. We started adjusting in the players that we had on our roster, trying to develop the ones that were currently on it, and then bring in new players that we thought were going to help us get better in every capacity. And then we were going to continue to develop schematically. Sometimes you show up to a place and it's, you're going to try to fit your scheme to what was going on here in the past or what you're trying to with the roster you have. And then after a year, you're able to really see what your guys do best and try to make those adjustments.
Just from watching the game, the guys we kind of expected to be good, certainly your transfers, Jayden DeLoria, who was really good at Washington State. He looked really good in your system. Jacob Cowing, who was successful transfer. He came in, had 3 touchdowns. But then there was we knew Tetaroa was going to be an impact guy, or at least we thought that because he was just such a huge recruit for the program. But then you had guys on the D-line. Other freshmen really seem like they are ready to make an impact there. I don't want to say, do you feel like, okay, this is exactly what I expected when you were putting this team together? But, as you saw it come to, was it a little bit surreal to see you guys were building to this, and then all of a sudden, wow, I'm sure there was some things that didn't go exactly how you planned, but to see how many of these newcomers just jumped up and really responded so well, that had to make you feel pretty good inside, right?
Well, I think that, we were hopeful that we were going to have, a lot of impact from our younger players. We knew we were going to have to do that as we were building this the way we wanted to build the program, which was going to be develop the players that we have that want to be a part of this program. And the guys that stayed, and we didn't lose any of our starters to the transfer portal. The guys that wanted to be a part of it, we're really committed to an incredible offseason program. And then, we tried to get 12 or 13 of our young freshmen to come in January. I think that made a really big difference, Bruce, in terms of the early enrollment, to be able to get them in a spring football and get them with our strength coach all of the spring, all of the summer, and then in training camp. And those were the guys that were able to impact us, the Jonas Avaneas, the Noah in a lot of ways, but the Kean Burnett, the T-Max, the Deuce Lane, Deuce Davis, Jacob Manu, all those guys getting playing time as true freshmen was really based upon their commitment to the offseason.
One thing I noticed is you have done a really good job of getting buy-in from people who maybe weren't sure what they were going to get. You'd never been a head coach before. You came there, and everything from getting the kind of the made men of Arizona who were the great players from there, whether it's Teddy Bruschi or Gronk or all the way down the list. And then I felt like, from looking at it on the outside in, you got a lot of the fans go, okay, we're going to give this guy a shot. It seems like it's gathered momentum, and obviously big improvement from last year. How much have you tried to rein it in and go, look, everybody's telling us how good we look now and how improved we are. It was one game, and try to just tamp it down, because I feel like so much has been building on the enthusiasm. Now, how do you keep it kind of building without letting in, a sense of, their heads getting big or getting too far out, over their skis?
Yeah, I think without a doubt, we have 3 different, there's 3 different variables going at the same time. It's making sure our team understands it's one game, our building and the university, one game, and then our fan base, one game. And it's the combination of all 3 of those things. all we've done is we played one good football game. And there's a lot of things from that one football game that we wanted to get better at and mistakes that we made. The key for us moving forward is that we just need to get better every single week. I feel like one of the privileges of being an assistant coach for 22 years and then becoming a head coach at 45 is that you've seen a lot of different ways different programs have handled success and failure and championships and then not championships and everything in between. For us, it's a matter of if we just trust the process and we embrace the grind, then we can continue to improve, and then results hopefully will come as we go. I just feel like I told her we're 0-0. That game ended. That was a nice celebration. That was fun to have, that victory on the road. It allows us to have 7 home games now and 4 road games left for the rest of the season. But now we have to figure out how we're going to beat an SEC team who's coming in town, and it's going to be an incredible challenge.
Yeah, we can get into this in a little bit, but some of your mentors, and it's an impressive list, especially Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick. You don't get any bigger than that. I'm curious, how much of you had this grand plan, I'm sure, before you took the job of how you were going to be as a head coach. Now that you're in the middle of this grind and you're embracing the grind too, how much are you kind of recalculating and just trying to, you have to react to what's different, because there are certain things that are different now than when you were an assistant at Miami or when you were assistant at other places that didn't really exist. You're dealing with kind of a different climate and a different time. So how much are you guys, when I say you guys, not just you, it's your staff, do you find yourself, okay, this is how it's going to work, but these are the ways we need to tweak it now?
Yeah, I think one of the things, Bruce, that you just brought up that has really been extremely important for me is not just I've had some great mentors and some great coaches that I've worked for in the past, but the current staff that we have that I'm able to really rely upon and be able to talk through different scenarios that they've lived through, right? Bringing in a guy like Johnny Nansen, who's now on his 5th Pac-12 team as our defensive coordinator. He can really help me along with, hey, what do you think the pulse of the team is? What do you think they need to hear? What have you dealt with going through scenarios like this? Jason Kafusi, who played at Utah, coached in the Pac-12. Jimmy, who's coached at 4 or 5 Pac-12 teams, who went to Washington when they were 0-12, and he went there on Sark's first staff, Jimmy Doherty. Brennan Carroll, when he went to USC for the first time with Pete, and watched how they revamped that and rebuilt it. Really be able to rely upon them, what they've done, and then having a strength coach from Alabama and listening and really relying upon him for so much advice. I don't think when you're preparing to be a head coach or hoping to be a head coach, you never really think about who's going to be the guys you're going to listen to the most. You just kind of think of like, well, I've worked for so many great coaches, I can just talk to them. Well, college football is very different, and none of those guys are in it right now. So it's really a matter of being able to rely upon our current coaching staff and then have the resources of some of the all-time greats that I've been able to stay close with.
So you prepared so much for this job, essentially. What is something that you never could have, no matter who you talk to, no matter where you've been, that just has been kind of a big eye opener for you in this job? Because as we said, referenced, NIL didn't exist before this. Now it's there, and there's the transfer portal. Now it's here. So what are beyond those things? What are things that's like, okay, this is a curveball. This I didn't realize until I'm in the chair now.
Roster management has changed every year, and where it really has become substantial now is with the way you recruit, the fact that you can sign, there are no signing limits, the fact that there's a transfer portal that's very active, the idea of being able to bring in players from within your conference. I mean, just a few years ago when I was coaching at UCLA, you couldn't do that. And at Michigan, we had Jake Rudock as a grad transfer, and that was like our big get. We got one transfer. It was Jake Rudock, and he came in and he started for us. But when you run into nowadays, the ability to try to turn your roster quickly is very different. The ability to be able to recognize that you have to keep your team one of the biggest issues is retention. I don't think that we give enough credit or conversation to the retention aspect of the portal. That how are you keeping players on your roster happy? You've got how many wide receivers on your roster? They all want to catch the ball. How many quarterbacks are you going to recruit? They all want to be the quarterback. Back in the day, you would say, hey, I'm going to take the best quarterback I can get every single year. That was kind of the mentality and the mantra. Well, now you're in a situation where how many of those guys are going to try to figure out what's in their best interest and how quickly do they want to play and how willing are they going to be to wait for you to help develop them. So that's kind of the one you just can never prepare for. It's the roster retention, keeping your team in a place where they want to be part of the Arizona family and don't get wrapped up in the position and really focus in on the mission.
When you mentioned, Jake Rudock, I remembered back when you were the offensive coordinator at Miami, I felt like, if I'm remembering this right, you made like a late run at him. He was a South Florida kid, maybe a Broward kid. He ended up going to the Big Ten anyway, but you had a relationship before that happened. I'm curious, you have one of the big time transfers you have, Jacob Cowing. Like, when did he get on your radar as like, okay, this guy can really help us and I think he'd be a really good fit?
Yeah, the Rudock story is exactly right. We got hired at Miami and Jake was committed to Iowa. And we kind of just tried to get in at the very last second and try to build a quick relationship. And, it paid off because even though he went to Iowa 4 years later, we're back in college football and he's looking for a place to call home, which is why I think recruiting right now, you have to recruit differently as well. You have to be happy for the other guy. You have to take the approach of, hey, you don't choose us today, we wish you the very best. It's not how could you be so ridiculously dumb? It's none of that. It's all about how can, we help you. With Jacob Cowing, his situation's unique. Obviously, I wasn't here during his recruitment process. He went to UTEP a few years back but always talked about loving Arizona. I really had no idea who he was other than his production. Stanley Berryhill came and saw us at the end of the season and chose to declare for the NFL draft. So he was our most productive receiver a year ago with 82 catches. So we felt as if we needed to make sure we could find somebody to fill that slot receiver position. And when Jacobs went into the portal, there was his high school coach and some guys that contacted us and said, he wants to, you might be able to keep him. You might be able to get him, I should say, in the state of Arizona. But you start seeing who your competition is and you start seeing all the great programs that are also trying to compete for him. But I was pretty relentless, as was Coach Cummings, as was Coach Doherty. And the three of us spent a substantial amount of time over Christmas really explaining to him why we think he would be a great fit for us, letting him know that he would immediately be a starter, and then discuss with him all of the impacts that he could make in our offense, and really went all the way back to Miami days with Philip Dorsett, or went to, what Travis Benjamin did for us in Miami, what Alan Hearns did for us in Miami, what Marquise Lee did for us at Jacksonville, and just kind of, what Jordan Lasley at UCLA, and just kind of find ways to show him what we would do with that wide receiver position and how he could help us.
You have an interesting game coming up. Now you got an SEC game, here it is, week 2, the home opener. You got Mississippi State coming in. I think it's an interesting coaching matchup because you and Mike Leach, personality wise, not very similar from knowing you both, but neither guy, was a college football player in your background. You had very different backgrounds. You also both had your mentors is one of his mentors, and that's Steve Spurrier. So there's some similarities there. Because you have such I know Mike's story really well, having worked with him on his book years ago, but because he had such an unconventional background, I think it gave him a sense of, I'm going to do it how I think it needs to be done, not the way it's been done for years and years. Do you see that commonality kind of like the same way that you can kind of, you obviously have had these very influential big figures in your life, but okay, I got to be me because I can't be somebody else, because it wasn't like, you didn't have Chuck Cecil's like NFL career or reputation. You were just kind of, this is who I'm going to be, and I got to just keep it that way, because if I don't, it's not going to work. Like, how have you kind of shaped yourself as a coach, much less a head football coach?
I mean, I've always looked up to Mike Leach in a lot of ways. We both call plays. We both run which is not, I don't know how many guys do that anymore, calling the plays as the head coach and are the offensive coordinator. I've always wanted to be similar in regards to having that head coach and, play caller responsibility. Steve Spurrier obviously is the guy that you could point to back in the college days. Sean McVay is the guy you would point to currently in the NFL days. I think that you have to be you. You have to be you. There's no way that I could stand up there, and I've been very transparent with our program, with our team, and with every player I've ever coached. How could I stand up there and claim I've done it if I've never done it? Or claim that I understand what they're going through if I've never gone through it? I'm sure Mike has his own approach. I don't really know him very well. But what I do know is that he probably, in that same manner, can talk about what he believes and what he thinks needs to happen and what he feels needs to get done to be successful. But how you do it is very unique. For us, our situation is this. I believe in our culture, I believe in our players, and I believe in our scheme. And if every day we continue to build off of that, we all have to be our own personality. We all have to approach things our own way. We can't worry about how others will judge us. We can't worry about what other people believe you should or shouldn't be. I've been very fortunate, been hired by some very, very good coaches and been able to try to learn from them and do what they ask of me. And now when I have the chance to be the head coach, I'm just grateful, appreciative of our staff and of our players that allow me to go out there and be me.
I know from your story that you had at times been a student assistant in a high school program as you were a student at Florida, and like we've talked about, worked for some really heavy hitters in the business. I'm curious if you took a bunch of steps back and if you had said, when you were that kid in New Jersey who was a tennis player, and told him, you will be the head coach of a Pac-12 program, and you will be a football coach, and you will be on a big, big stage, and you will have all these, heavyweight guys will be in your corner. What would that tennis player in New Jersey have thought if somebody had told him that?
Part of me would say, I know, because that's going to be what I want to do. And I just don't want anyone to get in the way of that. And then the other part of me, which is really how I still feel every day, is just a massive appreciation for all of the people that are around me. I just, I still, if I hear from or speak with or get a text message from, some of those coaches on the Mount Rushmore of head coaches, it still makes me feel like this is unbelievable. I still believe that. I still feel so grateful to be around and have the opportunity to reach out to some of these great coaches. When Steve Spurrier came back and spoke at our coaching clinic, I still felt like his GA. And I'll never not feel that way. When Sean came and spoke, I'm still running around making sure that he was hydrated up and he felt great at our practice and he got everything he needed, because just to have this relationship with those guys. Back then, when I was a young kid in New Jersey, that's all I ever wanted, was to be a head coach or be a football coach. So it's kind of all my mission was. But for it to actually happen, I just am so appreciative of all the people around me that have allowed it to happen. Most importantly, my wife, who has put up with, as you know, Bruce, 14 moves and raised 3 amazing girls, really a lot by herself.
Do you ever hear from either high school students or people who've now maybe started to hear about your story and your unconventional path? Because I think in a lot of ways, people would say to you, well, you weren't, you didn't play college football. You weren't this. There's no way you can be a head coach. Yeah, maybe you could be a high school coach. But I think just knowing Leach, one of the things that like his background was so odd, just in that he went to law school, and it just, his personality is definitely different. He, came up through the Hal Mummy ways where they were really outsiders. But the biggest thing with him was, I don't care that I'm not listening to anybody say why this isn't going to work. He was just kind of oblivious to the percentages being against him of being able to get this far. I would imagine yours is probably pretty inspiring for people who maybe are not on the normal path to go do it. And now people are probably starting to see where you're at and know where you came from. So how much have you heard, if at all, from people who maybe don't have the traditional background, who are like, yes, I see you as an inspiring way because you're one of the, people who've taken a different path?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly always people that will reach out and ask, how they can do it, or if they want to do it, or they want to be a head coach, or they want to be a college football coach or pro coach, and how do you do it? And I just say the same thing. You got to get really, really lucky, and you have to work really, really hard and be willing to always say yes and never say no. And that's the advice that I give anybody that asks. Like, there's no job that's too small. And when you're building your way up in this profession and you're working your way up, I don't care if it was, a year ago in New England, or 2 years ago in New England, or if it was 24 years ago in Gainesville, I was never going to say no. I don't care what anyone ever asked me to do. If it was a matter of draw 50 cards at night, if it was to run the scout team, if it was to, install in front of the whole offense, it didn't really matter to me. And that's the advice that I give anyone that reaches out now. Like, if you want to do it, find a way to do it. But the way to do it is never say no, get a little lucky, and work extremely hard. And the rest of it, I think, sometimes just lines up, or it doesn't.
That's good advice, Jedd. Best of luck this weekend against Mississippi State. And I think I imagine one of the things that your team is going to be focusing in on this weekend is kind of blocking out the noise, or people who are telling them probably all the good things now, and just, hey, stay in the moment.
Yeah, there's no question. Well, I appreciate you, Bruce, and appreciate the conversation. And we're just going to try to go 1-0 this week.
All right. Thanks again, Jedd. We'll see you around.
Okay, thank you.